Thank you for tuning in to WUSB Stony Brook 90.1 FM. I am DJ Joi with an I of Hygge with Joy on until 2 p.m. today. In the studio live, I have Frank Funaro, a drummer who has played with the Dellords, the Brandos, Camper Van Beethoven, Joey Ramone, the Dictators, Nils Lofgren, Cracker, and Dion DiMucci. Thank you so much, Frank, for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
And you are Long Island raised, right?
I am. Raised right here.
Why did you choose drumming, first of all?
Well, it's kind of interesting that it chose me. My father was a drummer, and he hadn't done really anything with it, but he wanted to teach me how to play the drums. When I was about 8 years old, and he would take me down the basement and say, right, left, right, left, right, left. And I just wasn't into it. And I could hear my friends out the window playing ball across the street. I was just not into it. In retrospect, I wish I had started then, but it took until I was 15 years old to sort of get my own idea about what I wanted to do. And drumming was part of it. I met some friends who played music, and they said, do you play anything? And I said, I guess I play drums. And that's how it started.
And from there, you made a career out of it. You toured the world.
Yeah, I just focused on that. It's really what I wanted to do with my life. I was lucky enough to know at the age of 15, here's what I want to do, and just be single-minded about it. So,
did the Beatles impact you in any way?
They did, of course. They impacted everybody, and Ringo was like a superstar to all of us drummers. And I had other influences as well, but Ringo was the first guy that I was aware of. Well, actually, the first guy that I was aware of was Gene Krupa, because my father was a Benny Goodman freak, and he used to play Benny Goodman around the house. Now, of course, again, in retrospect, I wish I had dug it then, but it took me until later in life to appreciate how powerful that band was, you know, getting 19 or 21 pieces all revved up. And they were kind of a rocking outfit, actually, Benny Goodman's band, and Gene Krupa was an influence on Keith Moon himself. So Gene Krupa was the first drummer I was aware of, but then the first drummer I was aware of where I said, hey, I'd like to do that, was definitely Ringo.
And can you talk a little bit more about the bands that you were a part of?
Bands I was a part of.
Cracker, Dellords. How did it all begin? What was the first
It began
break?
It began in junior high and high school. When I got into a band, I had the good fortune of being in a band with what we called our secret weapon, which was Paul Pasco, who went on to fame with playing with Madonna and Stevie Winwood and a lot of other people. He was in my first high school band, and we were a smashing success. We happened to be like a Led Zeppelin cover band before tribute bands. We were primarily a Led Zeppelin cover band. In 1975. You couldn't ask for a better platform.
That's pretty cool.
And we had a very artistic high school. Northport High School was very arts-oriented, you know, huge marching band, a lot of musicians. And so on a Friday night, everybody had nothing better to do. So I got spoiled early, playing for like 700, 800 people. Not every, but, you know, whenever we played, there was, as far as the eye could see.
And that was Battle of the Bands, right?
Yes, many battles of the bands.
What was that exactly? It was just an event that the high school put on of where bands would come and play.
Yeah, there was a lot of bands in the high school at that time, and yeah, we were pretty competitive with each other. There was a band that did really Mahavishnu Orchestra type things, Spectrum, I think they were called, there was Mr. Pig Melbo, and there was Gates of Oblivion, which did Black Sabbath, and you know there was some rock bands, and then there was some jazz bands. There was a band where it was kind of funny. I forget what they were called, but my best friend was a horn player, and like, you know, in the rock thing, it's not really any use for horns, but this band was playing Chicago and Blood, Sweat, and Tears and stuff, and so he got in a band. He was a trombone player in a high school band. It was a high school rock band. It's pretty awesome. So anyway, yeah, I got spoiled playing to that many people. And little did I know there was going to be 10 years of playing for 5 people and the owner's dog. with the sound of like a bottle tipping over, kind of the empty crickets kind of vibe. I mean, it was really an uphill kind of fight. I was spoiled early, so it put the hook in me. And so I would go, this was before the club scene was really exploding, as far as original music goes. Now, Long Island, as a lot of listeners would know, used to have this thriving cover scene. The Twisted Sister came out of it. They would play to like 1,500 people without a record deal, playing Bowie covers and things like that at this place called Hammerheads. And there was all these other bands, Rat Race Choir. I mean, I'm really bad with like listing things, but there was a ton of bands that really had solid followings. Everybody went out. The drinking age was 18. That has something to do with it. So people would, younger people go out. They want to party. They want to hang out and listen to music. And it was a really vital time. But as far as original music goes, the club scene didn't sort of explode until the Police came around and the Ramones and stuff like that. And then these clubs like CBGB's and stuff, which I'll talk about later, it kind of, you could develop your own original material. And you had to kind of fight to get an audience when you're doing that, if you're not playing cover material. So, so I had years of like slugging it out. I was pretty lucky though. We had another band with Paul Pesco, me and Paul Pesco and my friend Joe Quinlan, called Go and the Getters, and we were kind of again in the days before tribute acts. We were primarily a Police cover band. We just found a way that we could do that 3-piece, and occasionally Paul's sister Teresa would come up and sing Pretenders songs and stuff like Yoko Ono. We had a ball, and we used to play down in Northport. It was like a thriving music thing. Then we started branching out. We started playing at my father's place and U.S. Blues and Rosalind and things like that, just slowly building something. Then Paul went on to Greener Pastures, and I was sort of on my own again. And then I kind of discovered the city and started realizing that if I wanted to be, big quote marks, discovered, it wasn't going to happen in Long Island for me. Had to go to the big city, and I mean, it was right there. I had gone to these Enormo Dome concerts all my life, where you get on the train, and an hour and 20 minutes later, you're at Madison Square Garden. I mean, the train dumps you out under Madison Square Garden. Anybody who's not from New York would kind of flip out about how easy it was to go and see shows. And then there was the Palladium on 14th Street, which used to be the Academy of Music, and there was all these places that we used to go, Nassau Coliseum, to see music. But it was all like nosebleed seats, and I mean, you could hear the music, but it was like far away. It wasn't really that in your face. Then the Ramones happened, and I remember Spin Magazine once did a thing that said the two most important bands in the history of rock: number 1, Beatles; number 2, Ramones. And I agree with it. I know it's strange, I know you want to shoehorn Dylan in there, and people want the Stones in there and stuff like that. But as far as wide-ranging influence, as far as how many bands formed because of a band, I think the Beatles and the Ramones are a good bet. Bowie, of course, also. I mean, tons of people became Bowie clones in a way. So when the Ramones came out, there it was in your face. I mean, you could go to the front of the stage at will, although it got a little hairy after a while because they started developing a rabid fan base. But we used to go to CBGB's and see them, and we used to hang out in the pool hall parking lot, this ne'er-do-well kind of period of my life where I was trying to figure out what to do. And we would be standing around going, do you want to go see the Ramones tonight? And somebody would say, nah, I saw them last week. And then somebody would goad us, say, come on, let's go, come on. Because they were there all the time. So we saw the Ramones a bunch. They played on Long Island. They played here in Stony Brook. Shout out to Stony Brook. I mean, this is one of my favorite musical places on earth. I mean, I saw the Pretenders here. I saw the Ramones here a couple of times. And one of my favorite bands in the world, High Jules, is the Blue Oyster Cult, who were born here at Stony Brook University. A lot of people don't know that. So anyway, apologies to the patron saint of Long Island, Billy Joel, and his fans, but Blue Oyster Cult is sort of my jam when it comes to Long Island.
And for all of you Joybirds out there, we had Jules Rodino on Hygge with Joy. It was a lot of fun, You mentioned the Ramones. You worked with Joey Ramone.
I did. I had that honor. That was a trip. I got to know him a couple of years before I played on his record. He used to come see the band I was in. I was in this band, the Dictators. The Dictators are kind of credited with sort of quasi-starting punk rock. It's kind of weird because the Ramones, before they were a band, used to go see the Dictators. Now, I wasn't in the band then. I'm not old enough for that. But I was a big fan of the Dictators. I actually bought one of the Dictators records because the album cover made me laugh. I just said, this is fantastic.
Well, that's always a good reason.
Yeah, that's a good reason.
And for anyone tuning in, this is Frank Funaro, drummer of Cracker, Del Lords, worked with Joey Ramone, and many, many, many more. Toured the world, so we're listening to all of his experiences and wisdom.
I'm jumping chronologically all over the place. Basically, I got in the Del Lords. That was pretty early on. And then the guitar player from the Del Lords was from the Dictators, Scott Kempner, God bless. He was in the Dictators, and he was the rhythm guitar player. And I was a big fan. And so getting to meet him and then be in the Del Lords with him was fantastic. And then a few years into the Del Lords, the Dictators decided they wanted to reunite. And their ex-drummer was not interested. And so I got to jump in there. So then I played with the Dictators, and we used to play at CBGB's a lot. I have to humble brag about how many times. I won't even tell you how many times I've played CBGB's. It's insane. And, people wouldn't believe me.
For people who don't know, what is CBGB's?
CBGB's is sort of credited as the birthplace of punk rock. It's where the Ramones, Television, Blondie, Richard Hell and the Voidoids, all these bands came out of. Talking Heads, obviously, everybody knows who that is. They started out as like a humble little band that didn't know how to play, playing in front of 7 or 8 people. And they catapulted from there. Same with the Ramones, the same thing. When I mentioned the dog, I mean CBGB's had the fabled Hilly Crystal, who owned and ran CBGB's, had a dog, and the dog used to poop in the club. It was just ridiculous. I mean, the stories are out there. I might be telling them for the first time to people, but it was you had to dodge that as you came into the club, and there was like 7 or 8 people watching a band nightly. Until it exploded. Obviously, the Talking Heads Blondie shot way up. The Ramones, sadly, didn't shoot to where they wanted to shoot, but then they became one of the most important bands in the history of rock and roll, in my humble opinion. So anyway, I was playing with the Dictators there, and Joey Ramone started showing up to the shows. And one night after a show, we were in the dressing room, and Joey came over and he goes, "You're a great drummer, Frank." And I said, "Well, thank you, Joey." And without thinking about it, I said, "And if you ever make a solo record, you call me." And he giggled. And then the next time I saw him, I guess he forgot about it. He said, "You're a great drummer, Frank," again. And I said, "Well, Joey, thank you. And if you ever make a solo record, you call me." And this became this ritual. And this happened about maybe 10 times that he would come to see the Dictators play. And we would do that little dance. And then a couple of years went by, a few years went by. I got into Cracker. Like I said, I'm chronologically jumping around. And that started happening. I got a phone call one day, and, the producer of the upcoming Joey Ramone solo record with some kind of, he sounded almost mystified, like, "Who the hell are you?" kind of thing. "Joey wants you on his record." I was like, "Well, yes, where do I sign?" And I'm honored and saluting and with bells on and all that stuff. Yeah, that was quite a trip. That was quite an honor. And it was sad. It was towards the end of his life. And he was very sickly. He had lymphoma. Everybody knows these things now. And he was kind of on a little bit. He was getting better. But then he slipped on ice. Falling is like apparently this really bad thing that leads to other things. And while being treated for his fall, in the hospital, they had to suspend whatever it was that they were doing about the lymphoma, and then the lymphoma rushed in and grabbed him. And then he passed away. And so when we used to rehearse, sometimes the producer would come in and say, Joey can't come in today. And that was very sad. But then we got the record finished, and we got to play at CBGB's one gig, which I wish I could find the footage of. It was really a triumphant gig, and we played all the new stuff. It was fantastic and such an honor. I mean, and the guy was a prince. He was such a lovely guy. And he was very about the scene. He knew that he created buzz just by walking into a club. So what he would do, his nightly ritual when he was off the road, would be to just visit every club. He would just walk into every club and spend 15 or 20 minutes there just to be seen.
And this is Joey Ramone.
Yeah, just
Wow.
to keep the scene going, you know. Because after 76, 77, 78, up as far as 80, say, the New York scene, which was so friggin' hopping and vital, started to taper off a little bit. And he just wanted it to stay alive, so he was just out every night, just visiting with bands. And the Dictators was one of them. And that's how I wound up playing on this record.
Frank Funaro, drummer for Cracker, Del Lords, and worked with Joey Ramone, among many others, here until 2 p.m. I am DJ Joi with an I, and you were listening to WUSB Stony Brook. We talked about Blondie. Blondie will actually be playing at the Paramount in Huntington on August 10th.
Fabulous. I think that's a rescheduling. I think they got rescheduled a few times. And yeah, Blondie, fantastic, great pop act. Like all the punk acts out of CBGB's had a different vibe, right? And I mean, you know, Blondie was like girl group kind of poppy melodies and things like that. And they were fantastic. And their drummer, Clem Burke, is a monster. He's a great drummer. Very, very Keith Moonish in his delivery. And that's exciting. He's still with the band, you know. So
Let's listen to a song, Frank.
yeah, let's listen to a song.
Del Lords. I play the drums.
Well, I guess we could start with that.
Give a little history on this song.
Well, Scott felt, we got to give the drummer some, so he wrote me a song. I always felt it was kind of goofy. I've kind of re-embraced it because people like it. It's kind of a weird dichotomy. I think a lot of artists might feel this, where they have a love-hate relationship with their own work. Now, I didn't write it, but I felt it was a little bit goofy. You'll see what it is. And but I mean, it was, and I did very simple drum fills in tribute to what the heck was that drummer? Let There Be Drums. Somebody's got to call in and tell me, Let There Be Drums. Sandy something. Anyway, it was kind of a tribute to just that simplistic drumming style, and I got to sing it, not greatly, but humble.
Sandy Nelson.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Right on.
Let's listen to I Play the Drums, the Del Lords, on Hygge with Joy, with DJ Joi with an I, and Frank Funaro, drummer for Del Lords, Cracker, worked with Joey Ramone, and everyone else.
Yeah, and it ain't a thing but fun. But instead of reaching for my gun,
That was I Play the Drums off of Frontier Days, released in 1984. That was the Delords. We're going to listen to another Delords song. Frank, would you like to give a little backstory on that?
This is a lovely and touching little song about the perils of crack addiction, written in the 80s by Scott Kempner, produced by Neil Giraldo, otherwise known as Pat Benatar's hubby. Neil Giraldo came on board after our first record and beefed up the sound of the band. You might hear a difference in the production values of this. And this has Eric Ambel. Hello, Eric. Eric Ambel singing on this, and it's called Judas Kiss.
I hope wherever you are is a better place than this, 'cause I'm left here alone, betrayed by a Judas kiss. It's been a long hot summer, I'm still waiting on a breeze. I got nothing in my pocket, I got holes in my jeans. The radio kept playing the same rotten songs. Every single tune reminded me of you all summer long. And the roses in the closet, all summer I watched them fade. Now they crumble to the touch, like the promises you made. When I close my eyes, I can still taste your lips, 'cause I'm left here alone, betrayed by a Judas kiss, Judas kiss, Judas kiss. You left me hanging at the altar. Well, it might as well have been. For as sure as I'm standing here, there's sin and you have sinned. It don't matter if we like it. There is right and there is wrong. And when you look that hard for trouble, it surely won't take long. Will you remember our favorite picture, the electric dust under the bed? My bed of fire and nails, a jagged stone for my weary head. When I close my eyes, I can still taste your lips. Now I'm left here alone, betrayed by a Judas kiss, Judas kiss.
That was Judas Kiss, the Delords. 1986 was the year that song was released, and the Delords was Frank's first signed band and first experience to touring. So let's hear more about the Delords.
Let's see. Well, I had just gotten done playing with Go and the Getters. We used to play in Northport a lot at Henry F. Frica's. And we had a regular residency there, and Sparks in Huntington, which was co-owned by a character and Billy Joel's front of house sound man. So they had a great PA, great stage, great lights. It was really a good venue for us. We wound up sort of being a house band a little bit there. So after that, as I said, Paul Pesco went on to greener pastures, started climbing the ladder, his own ladder. And so I started looking around. A friend of mine introduced me to Scott. He knew my friend Rich. Hi, Rich. He sort of was an early adopter of the city vibe. He went in early, escaped Long Island clutches, and encouraged me to do the same. And I auditioned for a few bands, got into a couple of bands. I played Max's Kansas City with a band called Nylon. And but anyway, then he said, Scott Kempner, at the time known as Top 10. Top 10 is looking for a drummer for a new band. I was all over it. And so I went and I auditioned. I got the gig. Later the same day, Eric Amble walked in, who was the original Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. He was a Blackheart. And he came in and we all said, this feels right. Manny Coyote was the bass player from Massapequa. And Scott Kempner, as I said, Top 10 from the Dictators. So the four of us decided we're going to get together, form a band, and one of the first things that was spoken of was no straight jobs. It was like, Scott was like, absolutely nobody's getting a straight job because it's going to interfere with the band. I said, well, how am I going to make money? Well, what do you need money for? I said, well, where am I going to live? He said, we'll get an apartment. We'll figure it out. So anyway, I slept on a couch for a while, which I had been used to doing, actually, in a few bands before that in the city. The Delords was not my first city band, but it was my first band that got signed and seriously, pushed by a record company, well, sort of, and went out on tour. But it wasn't my first city band, so I was used to paying my dues in roach-infested apartments and living on rice and beans, seriously. And then, my girlfriend at the time, Hygge, she used to help me out. She used to steal food from the FIT cafeteria for the band. I'm sorry, I'm outing you on that. And so we used to live on grilled cheese then. We went from rice and beans to occasional grilled cheese. She used to get us a bunch of cheese. And Eric Amble had what we called the grilled cheese vibe. He just knew just how to melt it. He knew just how to make those sandwiches. So, you just lived hand to mouth, and whatever money came in went into the band, went into the lodging, whatever. Manny, the bass player, borrowed money from his uncle, and we just kind of stayed alive. And what it enabled us to do was get a rehearsal place, which was run by the Coyote brothers, Coyote Studios, which started in the Music Building on 39th Street and 8th Avenue in the city. That was a big deal, that place. And some real estate cat decided he was going to turn an old, it was an old garment industry building with all these sweatshop rooms. He was going to turn it into places where bands could rehearse. So there was 70 or 80 rehearsal studios on 9 floors. You weren't supposed to sleep there, but everybody did. Everybody just brought mattresses in and crashed there and stuff like that. And the Coyote Studios started up. We used to rehearse there. And we rehearsed 4 or 5 or 6 hours a day, 5 days a week for a year. And another
That's a lot of rehearsing.
Yeah, and one of Scott's schemes was we are not going to play out in New York City until we are ready. So we did warm-up gigs out in Long Island in the clubs that I had formerly trod the boards at, Sparks and a place called Horse Feathers. And we played out there. We developed a following out there. We got our chops together, our live chops, and then by the time we went to play in the city, we were pretty damn good.
It's almost like the Beatles and the Cavern.
In a way, yeah.
The Beatles got their groove at the Cavern, rehearsed like crazy,
Yeah,
and then they were already perfect.
that's right.
Did you think about that when you were doing it?
Well, it was just being in the moment at the time. And, Malcolm Gladwell, this author, he put out a book. I think it's called A Tipping Point or something like that. I forget what the book is called. He speaks of putting 10,000 hours into something. He said anybody who puts 10,000 hours into something can really go on to some success. There's other factors, of course, but he talks about Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, the Beatles. And it's interesting, the Beatles, yes, they were full-on live act for several years, killing it, just really getting good, really getting intuitive with each other's playing before they ever appeared on record, and before they got rejected by every record company the first go-round. So it's kind of funny. So we had that kind of in mind, that we were going to succeed no matter what. We were going to just put in the hard work. So we weren't necessarily thinking of it in the long, oversight that we have now, hindsight being 2020. We would just put our nose to the grindstone, did all this rehearsing, and we got really tight. That was the thing that was really an issue for a lot of bands that I was in before that. It was the idea was to get tight. It was everybody playing really together, locked together. So we did have one gig that we did instead of waiting. We just couldn't pass it up. We were the band for Screamin' Jay Hawkins at the Peppermint Lounge in 1980. I want to say 2 or 3. But as the Del Lords, we didn't come out of our shell. We didn't come out of Long Island, our warm-up stuff, until we were really good and ready. And then, all that rehearsal paid off. We were tight. We're a good band, powerful. And some people were saying that we sounded like the Ramones meets Hank Williams, because we had a little bit of a cowboy influence. And I remember when I first got in the van with the Del Lords, they were playing Johnny Cash all the time and George Jones and stuff like that. And at the time, my ears were acclimated to Deep Purple, Black Sabbath, Blue Oyster Cult, Beatles and Stones. But I had sort of tipped over into more heavy sounds, Led Zeppelin. And so my ears weren't ready for that. And so at first it'd be it felt like homework. And in a way it was. Endless hours on the highway listening to Johnny Cash and George Jones and everything that goes along with that. Everybody up and down. Dolly Parton, Porter Wagner, Muddy Waters, everything. It was a real education, just being in the van. And so that was valuable time too. And then my ears eventually, I couldn't live without any of those aforementioned things. So fantastic. And all that leaks into your consciousness, and it informs your influences. You sort of take on some of the influences of the people that you listen to endlessly, brutally and endlessly. So
You are listening to Stony Brook, WUSB 90.1 FM. I am DJ Joi with an I of Hygge with Joy. We have Frank Funaro here in the studio for a live interview from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. today. We have listened to the Del Lords, and next up we're going to listen to the Dictators. Frank, can you tell a little bit about the Dictators and your experience with that band?
As I said, I was in the Del Lords for a bunch of years, and then Scott said, hey, the Dictators want to reform. Would you like to be the drummer? I said, yes, I would. And I already knew a lot of the material, and I just learned it to perfection. And we rehearsed a lot, again. Rehearsal being very key to everything that I've ever done from Del Lords on. And, my whole life, really. Preparation is really very important. I mean, it goes without saying. So anyway, the Dictators, we went out on the road, and the Dictators were, as I always like to say, the Dictators were really big in New York City and Spain. Beyond that, it was like a little bit of a struggle, but we were superstars in New York City and Spain. And we kicked righteous you-know-what. Andy Chernoff, great writer. And Handsome Dick Manitoba, great front man. And so the Dictators, anybody who knows their rock history, they're actually in rock encyclopedias and things. They, like I said, they influenced the Ramones, for Christ's sake. And Andy Chernoff was the bass player on the solo record that I played on with Joey Ramone. Andy was a great writer. He had a fanzine first before he decided it was going to be a band. It was a fanzine. I think it was called Teenage Wasteland Gazette, maybe. It was just like articles about fake bands and like their friends and the goofy stuff that they did. And but then it became a concept for a band, and the Dictators were just funny, and they sort of predated. They had very tongue-in-cheek lyrics, kind of predated the punk thing. It was their lyrics were surprising, and they were too punk for the metal crowd and too metal for the punk crowd, because if you listen to them, they're pretty powerful, loud band. I was glad to be playing with them. And then I went on to play with them for 2 or 4 years, all over New York City and Spain.
And what year was this, Frank?
That oh boy, that was probably 91, 92-ish, something like that.
Who Will Save Rock and Roll? We're going to be listening to that.
Yes, that was one of the singles I played on. Obviously, I didn't play on the early stuff. They formed in, I think, 74 or something like that. And they were managed by the same management crew that Blue Oyster Cult was managed by. One of the reasons I picked up the record, the Dictators record, was because it was a funny cover. Another reason that I picked it up was because it was Sandy Pearlman and Murray Krugman were the producers. And I was like, well, any friend of, the Blue Oyster Cult is a friend of mine. And I was instantly sold. I put the record on and just was instantly sold. As I said, from WUSB, from Stony Brook University, Blue Oyster Cult. So where was I going with that? I played with the Dictators, very proud to play with the Dictators, and that came out of being in the Del Lords, and then the Joey thing came out of that. And I got to play on several singles. I didn't play on any of the albums because that was before my time, and I was a fan and owned all those albums when I joined the band. So I had I knew my songs already. But yeah, this is a single that we did, Who Will Save Rock and Roll.
Who will save rock and roll?
That was the Dictators, Who Will Save Rock and Roll. Frank, I want to talk a little bit more about your drumming, your techniques. How did you learn? Do you read music, or do you just feel it out? Do you do both? What's the story with all that?
I read enough drum music to play like a rudimentary chart, like rock and roll music. But I'm no Rod Morgenstein. Let's put it that way. I have to say that I'm self-taught. I learned off of records. I learned by lifting the needle and playing a song a million times. That's my era of vinyl. And I just mimicked what I heard on the records, really. And
That's incredible. So you just listened and then you taught yourself.
Yes. And occasionally somebody that was further along than me. I have to say, among the few regrets, I regret never having a teacher in my past. I had very sporadic lessons. And when I was in high school, I used to sneak into the drum rehearsal room. It was like this little room, about the size of this room here. And I used to play drums for like an hour, and before the main the music director would come in and say, "Frank, join the band or get out," and he would kick me out. And the funny thing was that he always allowed me to play for about an hour before he'd kick me out. He'd always kind of couple that with a plea to join a program, which I never did. But yeah, I used to just sneak in there and like play. And then I had a friend who I traded, not a hard trade, but a kind of a lend. I traded my mini bike for time on his drum set. He had a drum set in a basement room with a sliding glass door that he would leave unlocked for me. And then I would gasp, "Kids don't do this at home." I would cut school and go over to this guy's house and just play for hours. And when I first started, I had this hunger to just play for hours. So I would just look up at the clock and realize 4 hours had gone past and I had done nothing but drum. So it was a passion at the time. And that's where I laid my groundwork, really, between the purloined music room and the mini bike trade. That was kind of how I taught myself how to play drums.
Playing drums it's a brilliant way to express yourself, but it's also incredibly hard, and we just listen, you don't, but, just people in general listen, oh yeah, drums, whatever. It's not really an instrument, oh yeah, that's just...
There's a lot of jokes, yeah.
Yeah, but it's definitely an instrument, and it's incredibly difficult. So how did you get that rhythm down and be able to do like 8 things at once?
Well, let's make it clear that I only do 4 things at once. Okay, some drummers do 8 things at once. I do 4 things at once. I don't know how to explain how that happened. I mean, there was a series of revelations. It was hard to get over certain humps, But then when I did, it just felt so good. And then when I would learn how to do like a counter rhythm with my foot that I hadn't been able to do before, like keep my hands going and do something different with my foot, I'd be like, wow, cool. And that would keep me interested in the whole process. I was frustrated by some things, but not by others. And the things that I was frustrated by were, like, I used to have this passion for Mahavishnu Orchestra. I had one record by them. I had Birds of Fire record, Billy Cobham. And I know this is self-defeatist, but I knew in my heart I was never going to play that good. So I said, all right, what can I be good at? And then I would look at rock drummers and say, well, here's the thing about straight-up rock and roll drummers, is that you can be very groovy, have an amazing groove. I mean, one thing that I learned was, for me, the groove was more important than all the fills and things like that. So I went too far the opposite way. I didn't learn any fills. I just I said, the heck with fills. I'm going to learn how to play like Al Jackson Jr., play with Otis Redding, or, I'm going to learn how to play like Jim Keltner, playing with, everybody from George Harrison to Nick Lowe.
Totally, yeah.
I mean, it was the Keltner, Charlie Watts, Ringo style that I went after. And then as my girlfriend at the time used to drag me to see John Cougar Mellencamp, and I wound up really loving that band. And Kenny Aronoff was another influence. He was like the hardest hitting guy that I knew of at the time, that was playing very straightforward, very just playing the song, as we say. And so that was one of the things also that I felt a way to get hired was to play the song. I mean, if you're in a band with a songwriter, do their vision. And so I kind of was able to dodge the hard work of learning how to play like serious, like polyrhythms and fills and things like that. I'm not proud to be, under rehearsed or something like that. But what I spent all my time on, once I realized that I wasn't going to play side one of, Close to the Edge, which was something that some friends of mine wanted to attempt, I was like, I can't do this. I would go back to playing my, trying to perfect my version of Tumbling Dice, for instance,
Right.
which is an absurdly good groove. Maybe we could play that later. I didn't
I'd
play
love
on
to.
it, by the way. Not even close. But, yeah, absurdly good grooves that come out of some cats that I really, really went after, to the exclusion of, like, say, Billy Cobham. Still love that music, still love that material. I also never learned how to play swing music. I never learned how to really do jazz stuff. Not happy about that either, but, what can you do? I mean, I just became a specialist, and I just wanted to be the next Keltner, really, is what I wanted eventually. That was what drove me.
Well, I think there is something to be said about simplicity. And of course, it's not, what Ringo has done, what Charlie Watts has done, Jim Keltner. It's not simple. I mean, it's incredibly intricate, but there's something to be said for not being over dramatic or feeling like crazy. It's just appreciating and respecting the space in between.
Sure. The spaces. And simple doesn't necessarily mean easy. Mm-hmm. It's two different concepts. Simple and easy are two different concepts. That's something that people have to realize. So the way that I just kept getting hired was to be a workman-like drummer, really just nose to the grindstone, and play the song.
I want to talk more about space because that's fascinating to me as a person who has worked with Steve Gadd, the drummer, spoken to Jules Rodino on the show, Rod Morgenstein on the show, and now you, Frank, on the show. Space.
You're surrounded by drummers.
I really am. And I'm thrilled about it. Tell me about space and the importance of it, if you think there is an importance to it, because the focus is all about the drumming, the hitting, but what about the space next to it?
Well, that is really a deep concept, and the space between the notes, to play the space between the notes, I will go to my grave still striving towards it. I can get better at it incrementally. I can incrementally get better at it, but it's really a deep thing. And a pocket. One thing, a story that I heard was when I was working on a Cracker record. I was working with a producer who had worked with Keltner, and Keltner was on a project, and the artist said, "Could you play like a little more behind the beat?" And Keltner said something to the effect, I'm going to paraphrase here, he said something to the effect of, okay, so if 12 o'clock is on the beat and, 9 o'clock is before the beat and 3 o'clock is after the beat, where do you want me? And so the producer thought for a minute, and he kind of said, all right, I guess, how about 10 o'clock, whatever? Keltner went in and did it.
Wow.
He did it.
Wow.
And the producer said, wow. So I'm not there, but I love that story.
That's an incredible story.
And I mean, playing the space between the notes, I really can't expound on it any more than just like some people have a fatter groove and you sort of play behind the beat, be like kind of lazy. Some people are hyperkinetic, like Stuart Copeland. I love Stuart Copeland's drumming. But like if you take, I remember when I was learning the Go and the Getters material, the Police material, the song So Lonely. Like I said, I used to do it with vinyl. So I would listen to the song and then pick up the needle, drop it back on the beginning of the song, and marvel at how many beats per minute faster the song was. I mean, astoundingly, like 10 beats per minute. Well, drummers would know that that's pretty vast gulf. But like so much faster by the end of the song than the beginning of the song. It's incredible. So Stuart Copeland was a speedy guy, but you didn't notice it during the song. It was just really great, and it really served the song. But then you play So Lonely, and then you play Tumbling Dice, and you sort of see the difference. You will see what behind the beat and ahead of the beat is better than I can explain it.
Exactly. Cool. Very cool. I'm curious, Frank, what you have learned from touring the world.
Musically, or like don't do drugs and get enough sleep. Learn from touring. I had a love-hate relationship with touring because I always knew that what I was getting quote-unquote paid to do was not the hour and a half of joy that I had on stage, but this 6 to 8 to sometimes 14-hour drive that would precede that show. It's not for everybody, and it wreaks havoc on you, I don't know if you've heard the saying, sitting is the new smoking. Mm-hmm. Well, if you're in a van, that's all you're doing. You're spending your life sitting, and I'm a drummer too, right? So I'm just like sitting all the time. That was my whole life. So I had a love-hate thing about touring, but I got to see the world. The Del Lords were the first American band to play in Estonia. That was a proud moment for me, for all of us. And this was just before the wall came down.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty serious. And then when we got back on the mainland, it was amazing to get back to just Helsinki, Finland, which is just across a narrow strait from Estonia. Estonia was just very gray. There was no such thing as a neon light. There was no fluorescence. There was no pigments in the paint, was something I noticed. All the paint was just very dull. Everything was gray, gray, gray. And then you got back to Helsinki, and there was a supermarket with, 40 different kinds of cereal, and it was like, holy cow. It was just really night and day. So I learned about the world a little bit. I got to do a lot of Germany with the Brandos. That was a lot of Spain with, in Spain, there's, of course, there's Madrid and, the wonderful city of Madrid and Barcelona and all those places. But we used to play all these little farm towns and stuff too, with, next to like olive vineyards and stuff, olive orchards, and beautiful countryside. But then after a while, even 8 hours a day of looking out the window at the desert, after a while you're like, okay, enough desert, thank you.
It's grueling.
Thank you very much.
And when we come back from this public service announcement break and Tumbling Dice Rolling Stones song break, I want to talk about the glamour of being a musician. Woohoo. And how everyone thinks it's this, lovely, which it can be lovely, but...
Believe me, I'm not complaining. I don't want to sound like, touring so hard, But it's really not, if you're not touring like the Rolling Stones, where you're playing like every third day, and getting the rest in between and staying in the lavish hotels and things like that, it's a whole different vibe.
Life, even the Stones, the life of a musician is not glamorous, whatever people may think.
Right.
it is work.
Yeah.
You are listening to Hygge with Joy on WUSB Stony Brook 90.1 FM. I am DJ Joi with an I. We have Frank Funaro in the studio for a live interview from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. today. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll listen to some public service announcements and then Tumbling Dice, the Rolling Stones.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
You took the first step and quit smoking, but even former smokers may still be at risk for lung cancer. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know about a new low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early. It takes only 60 seconds and could save your life. You took the first step, now take the next. Visit SaveByTheScan.org for a simple quiz to see if you're eligible and talk to your doctor about screening. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
Oh
You are listening to WUSB Stony Brook 90.1 FM and W297BM Stony Brook 107.3 FM. This is Hygge with Joy, with DJ Joi with an I, here until 2 p.m. today with special guest in the studio live, Frank Funaro, drummer for the Delords, the Dictators, Cracker, worked with Joey Ramone, many others. That was Tumbling Dice. Rolling Stones. Frank spoke about that a little earlier, saying that it was an inspiration and influence, and then also he played it and getting back into that groove. Frank, take it away.
Well, that's a harder song to play than it seems like it is. It's it may be simple, but it ain't easy. It's just a really great back in the pocket groove, very lazy back in the pocket groove. And a lot of drummers just idolize Charlie Watts. And a lot of non-drummers say, what's the big deal? Or, you know.
You are listening to WUSB Stony Brook.
How often does that happen? How often does that happen?
You are listening to WUSB Stony Brook.
Sometimes I wanna take you down. Sometimes I wanna get you low. I'll brush your hair back from your eyes. Take you down, let the river flow. Sometimes I'm gonna walk the streets behind a green sheet of glass. A million miles below their feet. A million miles, a million miles. I'll be with you, girl, like being low. Hey, 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 like being stoned. I'll be with you, girl, like being low. Hey, 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 like being stoned.
Thank you.
A million pop is gonna make me sleep.
Thank you for listening to WUSB Stony Brook 90.1 FM and W297BM Stony Brook 107.3 FM. That was an emergency that came over the radio waves.
Quite exciting. Radio. Live radio.
Live radio! That is what you're hearing here at Stony Brook. We're playing right now Cracker Low, but we're going to listen to it again, and Frank is going to talk about the simplicity. Ain't easy.
So, this song, this band, I got into this band later in my career. I'm hearing the song, so it's distracting me.
We will tune out of the song.
Makes me want to play instead of talk.
And then we will come back and listen to Low.
Yeah, I was between bands, and I had just auditioned for, as it turns out, John Cougar Mellencamp. Didn't get the gig. I was sad about that, but I was told by smarter people that just be patient, something's going to happen. And sure enough, I got a phone call from a friend who said, I'm playing with this band. Want to come see him? I go, what's the band? He goes, Cracker. I go, you're playing with Cracker? He goes, yeah, I don't know who they are. And, you know, he didn't know who they were. And but I knew who they were. They were all over the radio. And so I really wanted the gig pretty badly, and I already knew a lot of the songs, but I studied up, and I said to my friend, I've told the story a million times now, I can't remember it. I said to my friend, who's the drummer? And he goes, Johnny Hot. And we laughed, and he said, no, that's really his name, Johnny Hot. And I said, well, you let me know if Johnny Hot ever overheats. We laughed. And then about 6 months later, he called me and he goes, well, Johnny Hot overheated.
No.
I go, is he out of the band? And he goes, well, no, not yet, but I'll give you the information. I'll give your phone number to David, the singer of Cracker. So David called me and he said, oh, I have to back up. Actually, when I found out that my friend was in Cracker, I said, I would love an opportunity to be in that band. And he goes, well, we have a drummer ready. Okay, right. So it just so happened that I was playing a festival with the Dictators, and we were like the 4 p.m. band, and they were like the 9 p.m. band. And so, but they had gotten to the venue early, and I said to my friend, if you can drag those guys over, they'll see me play, and then it'll kind of be like cool if I ever get the chance to maybe audition for them, they'll have already seen me play. So at one point in the Dictators show that we were playing at some racetrack up in New Hampshire, Loudon, New Hampshire, I think, I look over to the side of the stage. There's my friend flanked by Johnny and David from Cracker, and I'm like, all right, cool. And they gave me a thumbs up, and then afterwards we met and everything. And that was cool. And then months later, Johnny Hot overheated, and I got to do an audition. And the way they did the audition was David called, and he said, well, we have a gig in Washington, D.C., we'll fly you down here and you could do the sound check. I said, well, how about the train? He goes, yeah, sure. So I took Amtrak down to D.C. and went to see them at the 930 Club, the new 930 Club. I had played at the old 930 Club, which was kind of a rat-infested dive, but full of character. Lovely, lovely character. I had played there in the Del Lords, actually opening for Los Lobos when they first started their career.
And Los Lobos was just at the Great South Bay Festival.
Oh, man, they're so great. They're so great.
Yeah, I saw them. They were great. Yeah.
This whole conversation is making me want my own radio show. I just want to play Los Lobos all day. And Tumble and Dice. Once an hour. At the top of every hour, we play Tumble and Dice. Mm-hmm. That's our signature. So anyway, so I went down to the DC, the newer DC club, 930 Club. I played the audition with them. It went really well. And then I stuck around for the show, and I sat in the balcony and watched the show, and I was nervous a little bit that maybe in some wildest, movie script dream that he was going to like say, hey, would you like to, hey, we have a guest drummer or whatever, right? But it never happened. But I was sitting there like sort of on pins and needles, like wondering if that was going to happen. It didn't happen. But what did happen was, as it turns out, the drummer and David were sort of not getting along because the drummer wanted to do different type of music, and he was sort of not really into doing the Cracker thing anymore. And if you're in a band with a cat that's just not into it, it's not that fun. At one point, David turns around and smashes his acoustic guitar over the bass drum, and it splinters into a million pieces. And I just gasped and said, uh-oh, what the hell am I in for? So I found out what I was in for, but anyway, that's a different story. And long story short, I got the gig, started rehearsing. My first gig with them was at a place called Trax in Charlottesville, about 1,500 people. My second gig was Cracker with the Richmond Symphony Orchestra at the Shrine Auditorium in Richmond, Virginia, which you want to talk about nervous. I was nervous. I was so nervous that I didn't realize that my tongue was pushing on my teeth while I was playing, because I was the center. He's the drummer, and this big circle of an orchestra around me. There's the rest of the band, and then it's like 25 pieces of orchestra. And it's the second gig ever with these guys. And I actually pushed the cap off my tooth. and it was rattling around in my mouth. I had to take it out of my mouth and put it on my music stand. The music stand was not there for music, by the way. It was there for my drum machine. But anyway,
That's crazy.
yeah, I was just that nervous, you know.
That's
it all came
wild.
off great, and I wish there was a recording of it. I don't think they didn't allow recordings, and there was hardly any phones or anything in those days. Phone cameras that double as phones, and vice versa. So there's not really much of a record of that gig. It was amazing though, and then it just went on from there, and we did a lot of amazing gigs. I traveled a lot, and they were the first band that I was in that had a really solid United States following. All the other bands, the Brandos, the Dictators, the Del Lords, we spent a lot of time in Europe. The Brandos, as I said before, was primarily a German band, and Germany and Holland. They were really big there in those countries. The Dictators in Spain, as I said. So I got my feel for different cultures from these different bands, but this was the first. Cracker was the first band where it was just going around the United States, and that was pretty cool. That was fun.
Speaking of the cap on your tooth, stage fright, and having to perform even if you're not in the best mental state, or something happened, you don't feel well, you have a stomach ache, whatever that case may be. Maybe something happened in your family, a tragedy. How do you put on that front and just say, the show must go on, let's do this? That's going back to what we were talking about earlier about the glamour, so-called glamour, quote-unquote, of the music industry.
You just allow yourself to go into the song, into the music, as if it's a living thing, or it's a cave protecting you. I don't know. You just focus. You just get some tunnel vision going. And you just focus on the music. You close your eyes, and you could just be anywhere. You know, you could be in your bedroom, whatever. I mean, there are stories of. I used to be ashamed to admit, like, stage fright. I didn't get it that often, but certain things gave it to me, and But then I started hearing stories about, like, all the NFL players that would throw up in a trash can before the Super Bowl. You know, just like. It's a thing. It's a real thing. Performance anxiety is, and for some people it's crippling. For me, I always held it in check I was pretty much a freaking show off. You know, I just wanted to show off. And the thing is, here's the funny thing about stage fright with me. I would get much worse stage fright from a tiny audience than I would from a huge audience. The bigger the crowd. If I couldn't even tell that it was a crowd because it was just going off into the horizon of a festival, I was in my glory. But if I'm being scrutinized by 12 people that showed up in, like, some little roadhouse, you know, on a stormy night and nobody came out, you know, for some reason that is worse for me. I would rather just be in the big joint, you know. And then also there's a lot of, hey ma, look at me kind of attitude in my life, you know. It's like I'm proud to be a drummer, and I'm proud to drive a band.
Well, it was your passion,
Right.
and you followed it. Did you ever get backlash as far as, you know, from your family or friends or whatever? Oh, you want to be a drummer? You're never going to make it. Why would you do that? That's stupid. You need a real job.
Not really.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good that you had that support.
Well, I mean, I was so single-minded about it that I think people were like, all right, let's get out of this guy's way. Because he's headed somewhere, for sure. He knows something about this. And if there was any skepticism, I don't know, people didn't really share it with me. People just pretty much were supportive. My mom in particular was very, very supportive. Very proud. I used to send postcards from all over the world when I was touring, which is something that Ringo did, apparently, right? Postcards from Ringo is a book, right?
Yeah.
And
Postcards from Paradise, that's a good
Postcards
song.
from Paradise.
Yeah.
And when my mother passed, my sisters gave me 2 shoe boxes, just absolutely bursting with. I didn't realize how many thousands of postcards I had sent over the years. And she used to when she was older, she was in a bowling league after she retired, and she would bring each new postcard and show all her friends. They'd all gather around, you know. say, oh, Frank is in Spain now. Frank is in Germany. And they tell a little bit of a story. I wish I had written better stuff on the postcards, other than, wish you were here and, I miss you and stuff like that. Some of them I did, but basically, my mother was always proud, very supportive. And everybody around me sort of realized that I was just single-mindedly headed towards this thing. And something I never forgot, Scott Kempner, God bless, he said to me early on, when I was talking about like maybe getting a job, and he was like, no, we can't get jobs. We have to just do this all the time because it's such a competitive blah, 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 whatever. He said to me that you have to take the vow of poverty if you want to be a musician. And that really stuck with me. And I understood it. I understood what he meant. It meant if you're not making any money from it, you're still going to be doing it. You still love doing it. And I used to have this little joke that I would say to people, like, I'd get off stage with Crack, or we'd play a festival, something like that, and people would be like enthralled with the whole show and like my whole life and everything like that. Friends that I hadn't seen for a while, they go like, wow, and I'd say, shh, don't tell them, but I would do this for free. That was like my joke, and sort of half kidding.
So there wasn't really any extrinsic motivation, would you say, as far as pursuing your passion? The money was kind of irrelevant.
Well, it wasn't irrelevant. I wanted to make a living with my hands. That was kind of the thing.
Of course. But it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to make a lot of money at this. It was more...
At first. Yeah.
Well, you tell me, why did you... Of course, you did it because you had the passion, but I'm looking a little deeper into the motivation behind it. To just keep going, to be single-mindedly dedicated to being a drummer. What pushed you in that direction, other than Ringo?
I'm not really sure. Maybe, if we want to get all, Dr. Melfi on this situation, maybe it was because I was seeking the approval of my father or something. I don't know. But I mean, it's not really something I could put my finger on, much like the fact that when I was over my friend's house trading my mini bike for drum time, that I would play for 4 or 6 hours and not even look up. I don't really know why. I don't have a good answer for you. I mean, of course I wanted money. Of course I wanted to support myself and be able to not dig a ditch. I mean, God bless the ditch diggers, but I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to labor for a living, and I didn't really do a lot of school. I consider myself a pretty intelligent guy, but I said, school, that's not for me. That's not what's gonna get me where I want to go. So where I wanted to go was the posters on my wall. The rock bands that I idolized. That's where I wanted to go. I knew that wasn't going to come from diplomas and pieces of paper, stuff like that.
It's so admirable to be in the same room with someone with such passion and dedication and just like, that's what I want to do, I'm going to do it.
I'm lucky. People can be aimless for a long time before they finally settle on things. And if you're lucky enough to have a passion, you say to yourself, this is what I want to do, I'm going to stick with it, and you sort of know that you're going to stick with it, you're lucky. You're very lucky. Because, fads come and go. Not fads, really, but like passions can come and go. But if it's something that you really feel is a part of you. I mean, I pretty much define myself as a musician. Yeah, I'm a person, but I'm a musician. That's what I am. And that happened early. And I'm lucky for that. I'm very grateful that somehow, I don't know where it came from. I really don't. Yeah.
I'm glad that you could follow that life dream and achieve it, attain it.
It's cool. I mean, it's never been, like the Four Seasons and, a Bentley. It's never been that. But it's I'm fine with it. I'm good. I'm good. I'm very happy with the way things have turned out and the way they continue to turn out. Still moving forward, you know.
You're listening to Hygge with Joy on WUSB Stony Brook 90.1 FM. I am DJ Joi with an I, here in the studio with Frank Funaro, drummer of Cracker, Delords, worked with Joey Ramone, and many others. We're going to listen to a Cracker song now, which we were listening to earlier, Low.
Before we were so rudely interrupted by Mother Nature and her megaphone.
Frank, this song, Low, should we talk after?
Sure.
Cool. Let's listen. Low, it's called Cracker, 2006.
Sometimes I wanna take you down. Sometimes I wanna get you low. I'll brush your hair back from your eyes. Take you down, let the river flow. Sometimes I'm gonna walk the streets behind a green sheet of glass. A million miles below their feet. A million miles, a million miles. I'll be with you, girl, like being low. Hey, 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 like being stoned. I'll be with you, girl, like being low. Hey, 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 like being stoned. A million pop is gonna make me sleep. But just one rose, it knows your name. Fruit is rusting on the vine. A fruit is calling from the trees. Hey, don't you wanna go down like some junkie cosmonaut? A million miles below their feet. A million miles, a million miles. I'll be with you, girl, like being low. Hey, 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 like being stoned. I'll be with you, girl, like being low. Hey, 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 like being stoned. Blue is the sun. Brown is the sky. A green are her eyes. A million miles, a million miles. Hey, don't you wanna go down like some disgraced cosmonaut? Space cosmonaut, space cosmonaut, space cosmonaut. A million miles below their feet. A million miles, a million miles. I'll be with you, girl,
Well, it's really funny that you said 2006 because you sort of gave it away a little there.
A hint to all of our joy birds.
Yeah. Whenever people hear Low on the radio, friends of mine, they'll call and they'll say, "Hey, Frank, you're on. And I won't have the heart to tell them I didn't play on that song, I didn't play on the original hit. That was made in 1992 or 1993. However, we redid all the songs for some reasons that I won't go into. We redid the songs, so that is me playing Low. So now I can tell people without, guilt of omission that, yeah, I played on that. I did. I really
So that
did.
we just listened to Frank Funaro on Low, Cracker.
Yeah. And that was a song, that was the magical hit song that really just catapulted them and gave them a career that's going to this day, It's cool. It's great to be a part of that band.
Big Dipper is next.
Yeah. Big Dipper, we also redid. It's a different kind of vibe. So.
Cigarettes and carrot juice, and get yourself a new tattoo for those sleeveless days of June. I'm sitting on the cafe Zinno steps with a book I haven't started yet, watching all the girls walk by. Could I take you out? I'd be yours without a doubt on that Big Dipper. And if the sound of this, it frightens you, we could play it real cool and act somewhat indifferent. Hey June, why'd you have to come? Why'd you have to come around so soon? I wasn't ready for all this nature. The terrible green grass and violent blooms of flower dresses and afternoons that make me sleepy. But we could wait a while before we push that dull turnstile into the passage. The thousands they have tread, and others sometimes fled before the turn came. Our lives before a chance arrived, before the passage. From the top you can see Monterey, or think about San Jose, though I know it's not that pleasant. And hey Jim, a Kerouac, a brother of the famous Jack, or so he likes to say, lucky bastard. He's sitting on the cafe Zeno steps with a girl I'm not over yet, or watching all the world go by. Boy, you're looking bad. Did I make you feel that sad? I'm honestly flattered. But if she asked me out, I'll be hers without a doubt. On that Big Dipper, cigarettes and carrot juice, and get yourself a new tattoo for those sleeveless days of June. I'm sitting on the cafe Zeno steps. I haven't got the courage yet. I haven't got the courage yet. I haven't got the courage yet.
That was Big Dipper, Cracker.
Yeah, that's pretty funny because you played the one that I didn't play on, which is cool though. That's the original. If you want to hear me playing that song, you're going to have to get the Cracker Greatest Hits Redo record, or listen to it on Spotify or whatever
YouTube, it's on YouTube.
You crazy
also.
kids do today. But that was the drummer of that was Charlie Quintana, great drummer. He's passed on, lovely guy. He played with Social Distortion a bit. He was played with Cracker on that record, the Golden Age record. Fantastic drummer.
Here until 2 p.m., Hygge with Joy. I am DJ Joi. We have Frank Funaro here in the studio, and Frank played with camper van Beethoven, the godfathers of college rock. So we're going to listen to a song by them now. However, Frank didn't play on this one, but we both agreed that we need to play it.
Has to be played on college rock.
College rock radio station.
Every day I get up and pray to John, and he increases the number of clocks by exactly one. Everybody's coming home for lunch these days. Last night there were skinheads on my lawn. Take the skinheads bowling, take them bowling. Take the skinheads bowling, take them bowling. Some people say that bowling alley's got big lanes. Got big lanes, got big lanes. Some people say that bowling alleys all look the same. Look the same, look the same. There's not a line that goes here that rhymes with anything. Anything, anything. Had a dream last night, but I forget what it was. What it was, what it was. Take the skinheads bowling, take them bowling. Take the skinheads bowling, take them bowling. Had a dream last night about you, my friend. Had a dream I wanted to sleep next to plastic. Had a dream
That was Camper Van Beethoven, Take the Skinheads Bowling, off of Telephone Free Landslide Victory, the album 1985.
This was another band that I was very proud to be a part of. Didn't become like huge or anything. They weren't U2 or anything, but very proud to. These guys were innovators of the indie rock scene. They made their own records. You know, they didn't rely on record companies. Eventually, they got signed by Virgin Records, and I think they kind of broke them up a little bit. I mean, they when they did their indie thing. It was David Lowery, this singer who eventually formed Cracker. This was the same circumstance that I had with the Del Lords. I was in the Del Lords for a while, and they said, hey, we're going to reform the Dictators. Would you like to be the drummer? I was the beneficiary of that move. And then same thing, I was in Cracker, and they said, hey, we're going to reform Camper Van Beethoven. Would you like to join? Yes to both. And it was cool. It was a great time.
Saying yes.
Yeah, it was a great time saying yes. Camper Van Beethoven was a totally different kind of experience, but we'll go into that on, when I have my own radio show. Hint, hint.
Don't Worry About Me.
Ah, yes, Don't Worry About Me. This is Joey Ramone.
And you played on it.
Yes, the title track of his record. I played on 4 songs on that record. There's a long story, which is, I'll go into that some other year. But... yes, Don't Worry About Me.
Here on WUSB.
Don't worry about me. 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 I want you, baby, but you always lie. Always complaining or contemplating suicide. I want you, baby, but you don't even try. Always complaining, saying bye, baby, bye, bye, bye. Don't worry about me. 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 When I saw you, I knew that I wanted you, but you're the kind of girl that you just can't get through to. Standing by the corner in a mini skirt, you're the kind of girl that you just can't forget. And I'm sitting here, sitting blue, thinking about all that we've been through. I gotta get away. Don't worry about me. 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 Don't
Frank played on that one, Don't Worry About Me, Joey Ramone. Next up, we're going to listen to Crooked Line and Pass the Hat, the Brandos and Nils Lofgren. And Frank played on both of these too.
Pass the hat, friend, you'd be so kind, friend. Take a while for a smile and a song. Leave your worries, leave your hurry. In a while you're gonna find you can't help but sing along. Take a look round at this hard town. All you see, people walking alone. Weary faces, sad faces. Got to bring these voices together in song. You got to live before you die. Got to laugh more than you cry. I'll give you all I got to give. If you pass the hat, friend. We're all the same, friend. You and me and the man next to you. Been through bad times, been through sad times. Just the same, here's a song just to help to get us through. Take a look down the streets of this town. Like a veil, there's a gloom hanging down. But even still, friends, you've got the real friends. We can raise our voices together all around. You got to live before you die. Got to laugh more than you cry. I'll give you all I got to give. If you pass the hat, friend, if you'd be so kind, friend. Soon enough, there's a grave for us all. But we're alive, friends, you and I, friends. We can raise our voices, there's still time before the fall. You got to live before you die. Got to laugh more than you cry. I'll give you all I got to give. If
crooked line. And I draw straight with a crooked line. With a crooked line.
We listened to the Brandos' Pass the Hat, which actually, Frank, you were mentioning while we were listening, the album cover. If you Joybirds out there, check out the album cover of the Brandos' Pass the Hat. You can see.
It's photographs taken by Mick Rock, another amazing soul. He's passed. He did many famous photographs. I think the most famous album cover that he ever did was the Queen. I forget what record it was. It was the Queen album cover with the silhouettes, and Freddie's got his hands crossed across his chest, and it's just like the white faces, the four of them. Very famous photographer. What an honor to have worked with him.
Yeah.
And if you look at the album cover, you can see it's lit like impeccably. It took hours. He had like an assistant come around and move that light 2 inches, and he's English guy. He called everybody darling. Could you move a little to the left, darling? Just all day long, darling.
That's
it's
hilarious.
Lovely. He's
and
a lovely man.
We just played Nils Lofgren, Crooked Line, which I loved, and I heard those fills, Frank.
I did some fills. Yeah.
You did do some fills, yeah.
He's another guy. Totally honored to, share the same room with. Fantastic player, fantastic artist, and a lovely human being. Great guy.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Next up, we're going to listen to Jack the Ripper, which Frank produced and wrote.
No, I didn't write.
You didn't write.
I produced it and played drums on it.
You produced and played.
By my friend Brick Briscoe, yes.
Yes. And then after that, we got a song request, and also thank you, Ed, for calling in a little bit earlier in the show. Rock and Roll. You toured with Lou Reed?
Sure. Del Lords opened for Lou Reed. He, at his request, actually. He wanted us because he was given a bunch of records to choose a New York band for his New York tour. His tour was called New York, after his album, and he wanted a New York band. And then he heard our record and said, "I want these guys." And then he came into our dressing room. I remember the first night. Before we went on stage, and he goes, "Did you get a sound check?" We said, "Yeah." And he goes, I just want to tell you guys, I could have gotten a band, I could have put asses in the seats, but I didn't care." I like you guys, it was cool.
That is funny.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you for listening to today's show. That wraps up today's show for the interview, but we're going to be playing a lot more music, so stay tuned. Jack the Ripper, Frank produced and played on it, and then we're going to play Rock and Roll Velvet Underground. This is WUSB Stony Brook. I am DJ Joi with an I, and you have heard 2 hours of Frank Funaro, the experiences and everything, music, everything.
I can barely stand it.
All right, let's take a listen. Thanks for tuning in.